All right. Today we're going to build a fully automated closed case survey that is integrated with a CRM system. Ours is going to be Salesforce today. Typically this survey is sent to someone who has raised a case and then that case has been closed. Rules can be followed to send the survey to certain product or customer groups. Additionally, some custom information can be stored against that contact. We'll set up an example with the last survey response date. Thus, we don't over-survey contacts. We are going to build out the Salesforce object that will house the closed case survey responses. And we'll also build out the email template with the survey URL embedded in it with the annotated URL, so some hidden questions in that URL will be in there. And thus, at the end today, we'll have a fully automated closed case survey solution. So the first step is actually to build out the survey. To do that, we'll just start with logging into ClickTools. So I'm assuming most of you are familiar with ClickTools a little bit, but if not, you just select that customer login from our home screen. You type in your email address, which is your username, and then your password. Anytime you forget that password, you do have the option to reset password and send it to the email address you've put up into the top here. I'm just going to go ahead and log in. All right. So the first step we're going to do, like I said, we're just going to build our closed case survey. So over here on the right-hand side under Quick Tasks, I'm going to create new survey. We need to give it a survey name. You can select a folder to put it in. And then you have the option to select a template. This gives your survey the look and feel or branding that you've set up. That's in templates where you can add the images such as your company logo and such. I think I'm just going to use this one here. And I'm going to select Create. On the left-hand side here, you'll see we have our survey toolbox. And really, as you probably are aware, surveys kind of consist of two data, kind of like text and then the fields and questions really. So really just two items. So the first thing I'm going to add is actually I'm going to add some questions. There's 19 question types in the system. We have kind of a single select, a multi-select, text, numeric, and other, which actually has a document upload feature, some ranking, country, etc. I'm just going to add text. I'm actually going to add in what we call our hidden questions. And this is what actually will tie the data back into Salesforce. So in these hidden questions and in that email template that we're going to create, we're going to pass in at the very least the case ID and the contact ID and the account ID for this scenario. And to do that, we'll just start off by making our very simple hidden text questions. I need to add 4 of them, so I could go back here to add additional questions, or I can select this option over here. If I just put my mouse over the question, select Copy. And when you copy, it brings it to the very bottom of the survey. If you were having an extremely long survey, over here on the right-hand side, let's say you decided you wanted to add a question more towards the top of the survey, you select this green option arrow, you can choose to add a question, or if you just want to choose to copy, we'll insert it right below that. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind, that little arrow. Okay, so now I'm just going to edit these so that they make sense. So select Edit. I'm going to do contact ID, and this will come from Salesforce, from the email template we'll create. Okay, and these will be hidden. These don't mean anything to the end client, so they're not going to see this. It's not worth them seeing it. They're just for tying the data back into Salesforce and creating those relationships. Oops. We've got account ID. We're going to do case ID, so it ties it back to the case so we can see the response against the case. And then I'm actually going to pass the case subject in, and then I'll show you kind of a little trick that you can use to pass that information in so the end user can actually see some of that relevant information. Okay? So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add some text or script, kind of an introduction, because these are all going to be hidden and they won't be part of the survey that the end user sees. So I'm just going to select Add Text Script. And you see I didn't uncheck my green box, my green arrow here, so I'm going to uncheck that now. And then I'm actually just going to drop and drag this down below, because I like to put all my reference items on top and then continue to build the actual survey below that. So I'm just going to edit this. The title portion is just for your own information that's not seen by the end user. So I'm just going to say, please rate our service. Okay. Bear with me a minute, actually. I'm actually going to pipe in the subject. Just call this case details. So if we look here, case subject, which I'll pass in, is question number 4 in the survey. And I want to be able to pass that in so the client kind of remembers, oh, this was the case about such and such. So to do that, there's something called piping. And there's a little bit of a formula for that. You may want to write this down. The formula is actually a $sign, kind of a squiggly bracket. Then you type question, an underscore, and after that underscore, you put the number of the question that you want to pass the details in. So for us, it's going to be number 4, and then another squiggly bracket. So what will happen is when that case subject passes into there, the client will see that it's not something they can edit, they can just view those details. Okay? Oops. Where'd you go? Okay. Okay. Now I want to show you something else. There's an option called Copy Content here. And this allows you to take questions from other surveys that you may have built already, or you found in, there's a number of examples that come with the application. So I'm going to do something that's called copy content. So I'm going to take questions that I've already built in another survey and pull them into this survey. And to do that, you can select copy content. You need to find the survey that those questions reside in, and if yours gets a little overwhelming like mine does, it can take a little while to find those, but I believe they're up here. Yes. Okay. And you can see there's a number of questions in here, but I know that I just want to take number 5, okay, and I'm going to copy that into my survey. So this is a multi-radio option. I built it in that other survey and I just copied it over here because there isn't anything too different about it that I want to change. Just so we take a look at it, see how it looks. This is your help section, so I put my help details in here, so the 1 through 5, and just kind of explained what that is. And then these are my options. So this is a multi-radio option, so you put your details in there for that information. Okay. I do have a couple other questions that I want to add. Let's see here. So I'm going to go to Add Question. I'm going to choose Radio. And I'm just going to choose Edit. And I'm just going to do, how likely would you recommend us to other colleagues? putting my help options in. Now I'm going to actually make this 1 through 10 scale, and to do that, all I need to do here is add a couple different options, so 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then I actually just need to put the numbers in here. Oops. And then up here at the top you'll see columns. Now if I leave that to 1, it'll run the numbers straight down the page. If I change that to 10, it's going to run them across the page. So I'm going to select 10 for our option here, and I'm going to select apply. Okay, so that runs them this way instead of down the page that way. So that's something to keep in mind. And then I'm going to add one final question because you kind of want to keep a closed case survey pretty short. You get a better response rate than if it's not extremely long. And I'm just going to add an essay question here. Okay. Select edit. Okay. Now I'm actually going to condition this essay question to only come up if they answer 4 or less to question number 6. Okay, so this is called question conditioning. You can use this multiple ways. So I'm just going to the question that I only want to appear if the question above is a low score. So it'll show you all the questions that live above that question. I'm looking for number 6 here. I'm going to select add, and I only want it to appear if it is less than or equal to 4. So if they pick anything between 1 and 4, this question will appear, otherwise it will not appear for them to answer. Okay. Hit apply. All right, if you want to take a look at it, you can select preview. Now keep in mind, I'm going to hide these when I'm ready to deploy, and then this is how the survey will look. Now this template has something called a progress bar associated with it. You would remove that progress bar most likely because if you have a one-page survey, it's always going to say 100% because the progress bar is based on pages. So it's something to keep in mind. If you do have a long survey, just keep in mind and you don't want people to have to scroll all the way down, you can simply select to add a page break. For our scenario and for closed cases, I would recommend keeping it all to one page, very short and to the point. Okay? You do have a deploy option up here as well, which will show you the URL for it. So if I just open that in a new tab, and here's the actual survey URL that will go into that email template that we'll create in a couple further steps along. Okay. So you have your survey all built. I would recommend, when you're building the survey, you kind of need to think about what your end actions and your reporting criteria are. So that's something to think of before you actually even build kind of out these questions. Is this going to meet my reporting requirements at the end? What actions am I going to take off of these questions? Okay. So our next step is we have our survey built. The next step that we need to do is we kind of need to create the object within Salesforce to house the actual survey response data so that you can run reports as well in Salesforce and create dashboards from that as well. And then people who don't necessarily all need to have a login to ClickTools to view those survey results. So I'm going to go over to my Salesforce organization now. And I've started building out that object, but I'll kind of walk you through that. So if you go to Setup, and again, you're going to need to have, some permissions to be able to create objects and create lookups and fields of that nature. Anything that we're kind of mapping to, you're going to need the permissions to be able to create, edit, update those objects, like the contact field. you're going to need to have full permissions to that if possible. Okay, so to create the object, you log into your Salesforce org, you select Setup, and over on the left-hand side here, under App Setup, you'll see Create, and then you will see Objects. Okay. I've created an object already called One Closed Case Feedback, but if you need to create a new object, you just select New Custom Object and give it a title. So I've put some of the data in here already. I'll walk you through this a little bit. So I've created what's called an account and contact lookup, and it's very important that you have these in here, as you otherwise won't have a way to actually look at the survey responses kind of on a per individual basis. So this will then associate it as a related list to the account, the contact, and we're going to also want it as a related list on the case. So if I go to New here, I'm going to select the type as a lookup relationship and hit Next. And I want to relate it to the case, so I want it as a related list on the case, the survey response. So hit Next. Just tab through that. Typically, I just hit the defaults on nearly everything in here. Hit Next. Your admin or somebody may have some restrictions or criteria of what profiles this has to be on, so that's just something to keep in mind. Otherwise, I hit Next, the layout, Next, and then I select Save and New to bring me right back into create my next field. So we have account, contact, case, all as lookups, so they will live as a related, so the survey response will live as a related list on each of those objects. And so the next item I want to add in is I want to create, I haven't put in the overall performance question, so I'm going to go ahead and add that. Now I'm going to choose this as a number option. A lot of times people want to pass things in with the wording, like very good or not good. But ultimately at the end, most people want a number so that they can run some formulas on that data or do some additions on those responses. When things are in like a word type format, you can't necessarily run calculations on them too easily. So that's just something to keep in mind in regards to your reporting. What is the outcome that you want? Do you want to be able to run a number response on this question? So for our scenario, I'm going to create that as a number. Now sometimes you have to get, if you have long questions, you have to get clever on your field labeling, as I believe it is about a 25 character limit on the field label. Lucky for us, our questions are short. Okay. Overall performance. Something that I do a lot for people who have extremely long questions is actually write the full question out in the help text, and then you kind of get a small icon next to that field label that does spill out the whole question. So that's something to keep in mind if you've really had to narrow down your field label, that you can put the whole question in the help text. Again, I just leave the defaults about 99% of the time on these items, so I just hit Next. And I'm going to go to Save and New again. My next question that I would like to add is our question of how likely would you recommend this to other colleagues? So again, I'm going to use that as a number because I know that I want to be able to run a formula on that for my reporting purposes. Okay. Again, I'm just selecting the defaults, hitting Next, Save, and New. And then my final item that I want to add, that I have to add in here, is a text area for that essay question of please let us know how we can improve. Go ahead and hit Next. So that's a text area. I always choose long. People always are like, which one do I choose? Just choose long just in case somebody gets quite wordy. Then you're not going to lose anything. Nothing gained or lost. Okay. So as you're probably noticing is I have a field for every question that I have on the survey. So sometimes people are in complete denial of the fact that that is how you have to build this out. So for every question I have on the survey that I want to appear in Salesforce, I have to create a field for that. So that's just something to keep in mind, kind of a one-to-one relationship. If I have a question in the survey, I need to build a field for it in my custom object to house that response. Okay, I think that is all our questions and that I need to add. Other ones that we have are very similar to how I just created the other ones. Mine are really pretty much a number value, have a long text, and then those key items, the lookup, which will kind of connect all the data together in here. Okay, so we have our object created. And this creating an object is not the only way to store the feedback. Some people actually, they don't create a custom object. They may just be passing back certain fields to already existing objects, such as you could create some custom fields on a case record. We did it in a custom object. The other option is if you don't want to put all this information into Salesforce, you're not really planning on doing any of the reporting from Salesforce, you can just pass in the survey URL link, and I'll add one of those in just so you can see that. So I'm going to choose URL. I'm going to hit next. You know, maybe you just want a salesperson to be able to see this response, but not necessarily run any reports on them. So this is another way that we can actually do that. Okay. All right. So I'm actually the next step I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create the email with the annotated URL. Then we'll set up the workflow that actually will end up triggering this off. And then my final step will be I'll set up the mapping to make this all come together, okay? So to create the email template, again, I can go to Setup. I go to Email under Personal Setup and then My Templates. And I'm just going to select New Template. I'm just going to use text for simple, keeping things kind of simple. Something to keep in mind, because we're actually going to, when we build our workflow, we're actually going to go out and look for this email template so that the workflow knows to send this one if it meets that criteria. You have to make sure that you check that box, available for use. Okay. Give it a title. Okay. Give it a subject. So this is to create this email template. You have to use something in here called merge fields, so Salesforce merge fields. Now, when you're creating this email template, keep in mind you have to be able to pull that data that you need all from one single object. So for our case, we're actually going to pull it just from the case. You can't pull it from the case object and the job object and what other objects you have. You have to have it all consolidated onto one object. The system is not smart enough to say, oh, case 500 goes with this, 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 and this. So you have to make sure that that case object is housing all the data that you want. And if you're not sure, which a lot of times people aren't sure, you can just go in here and take a look and give it a test, and you'll figure out pretty quickly what fields that you're missing or require. A lot of times people want to send an email from an account object. However, an account has multiple contacts in it, so the system isn't going to know who or which contact to send it to. So it's something to kind of keep in mind when you're trying to build these out. Okay? So we're going to go to the case fields. That's where we're going to grab all our data from. And these are the fields on the case object. So I'm looking for the contact name. And you see here it says copy merge field value. That's exactly what you want to do. So I'm just going to copy that. And so I'm just going to put in here, dear case contact, and it'll automatically insert the appropriate name into that field. Okay? Okay. You can obviously add in a lot of custom information from here. If you want to put the case ID, the case subject, etc., you can add all those details in using those merge fields. For now, we're just going to put in our survey URL. So if I go back to ClickTools here, here's my survey URL. Again, that's under the Deployer tab. This is the URL that I'm going to utilize. Typically, you'll end up hiding this under a link, an HTML link in your email, but we're just going to keep it all out in the open so you guys can see it today. So if we take a look here back at our survey, you'll notice that we have those fields on the top of contact ID, account ID, case subject. So those are hidden fields that we need to embed into that survey URL so that information gets populated and links the data back into Salesforce. So to do that, you got to write a little bit of a little formula here. Not really formula, just a little thing to keep in mind. So what I'm going to do here is right at the end of the survey URL, I'm going to put the AND symbol. So typically it's number 7 on most people's keypad. And then I'm going to type the letter Q1 equals. Now that's saying and question 1 equals, and for us that's going to be the case contact ID. That's our first question in our survey, and we want to pass in the case contact ID. Okay? So we go to our merge fields here. We go to contact ID, copy that, paste that in, put that AND symbol in again, Q2, so question 2 in the survey, so AND question 2, we want that to equal, I believe it's account ID, so we want to associate it to the account. So we grab account ID. And as you probably can guess, then the next one, and Q3 equals case ID. So we'll go to our merge fields, find case ID, copy that one. Then our fourth and final one is the subject, so and Q4 equals, we're going to look for the case subject. And sometimes when people get to customizing this a lot, you sometimes have to test out what is what. They get kind of conflicting or multiple fields that kind of sound the same, so you kind of just sometimes have to do a little trial and error. Now, case subject, or if you were passing in such as like a full name or name or something, could potentially have spaces in it. It's probably very unlikely going to be one word. URLs do not like spaces. If there's a space in a URL, if you look at URLs, there's a space, it'll break right after that. So any data that you have will break right at the space. So for us to overcome that, there's something called URL encode. And we're going to put that in here as well, so you can see how that works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep case subject, that squiggly bracket, and the exclamation point. And after the exclamation point, I'm just going to type in all capital letters URL encode. Okay, can everybody see that? Then I'm just going to put another bracket in, number 9 on people's keyboard, right before the word case, and then right at the end of the T, I'm going to put another bracket, which is typically a 0, around it. So it encases it around those 2 brackets. Then at the very end, there's the squiggly bracket. So squiggly bracket, exclamation point, URL encode, bracket around your merge field, and then a squiggly bracket on the very end. Okay, that will take care of any spacing issues that you have. Sometimes things get a little funny because there's already some underneath coding on some of these fields that may have spacing in them. So it's kind of a little bit of a trial and error sometimes to make sure that you are getting the proper data passed in. So I think that's all right. NQ1 equals case contact ID, NQ2 equals account, NQ3. It's really easy to make a mistake on these. I noticed the other day that I actually didn't put the and, I put the number 7 in. So just keep that in mind that it is easy to make a mistake on that. Okay? So once you save it, you can actually send a test, or you can kind of just verify if everything is working just by selecting the send test and verify merge fields. Now again, you only can pull this from one object, so don't go up here and find a contact and then go down here and find a case. We're just going to go to case. We're just going to throw a case in there. Hit OK. And you can see then that the fields are actually getting populated with the correct data. So you may not be aware of this, but contact ID in Salesforce always starts with a 003, and that's exactly what you're looking for to populate in here. So if you pull up a contact in your Salesforce org, you'll notice at the very top in the browser, it'll have a 003 number in there. Same with account ID. Account ID always starts with a 001. A case ID always starts with a 500. And then down here is our subject, which was just a bunch of numbers on that test one. So that's just something to keep in mind, and that's exactly what you're looking for. Okay? So you know that that should be working properly when you're ready to utilize it. Okay? So that's really creating the email template. You may have custom letterhead already built in your system. Really all you need to do is just build this URL and embed it under that link. Okay? Okay, so the next step, you guys bored yet? The next step is to create the workflow. So to do this, I'll go back to that lovely setup. On the left-hand side here, I'm under App Setup. I'm going to create and go to Workflow and Approvals. I'm going to create and manage workflow rules, and I'm going to select New Rule. Now you need to select the object that this is going to be triggering from. In our case, it will be the case object, and ultimately, upon a case closure, it's going to trigger this off. So if I go to Select Object, I'm going to select Case. Does somebody want to mute their phone? We're getting a lot of clapping and party going on in the background or something. You can go ahead and give it a rule name. Okay. You have the option evaluation criteria. Typically I stick with the default, so created and anytime it's edited to subsequently meet criteria is what we're going to use. So, and that's pretty much the one I use 99% of the time. So this is where you need to have an understanding of what exactly is going to make this trigger out. So for our scenario, it's going to be a status, which is very common. And this can get a little tricky, so take a look in your system, make sure you're looking at the right field. So for ours, I'm using case closed, and I want that to be equals true. So that case has been closed, and I want it to equal that. And I'm going to get a little more specific in that I want it based on a certain product. So I want this survey to go out based on a certain product. So case product equals, and this will bring up that list. I'm just going to say GC 1040. Okay. You'll want to make sure that your contact has not opted out if you have an opt-out. So the case object is very good in that it combines in the contact details pretty good. So if I go down a little bit lower, you'll see that they do bring in some contact fields into that case object. So I just want to have contact email opt-out is not equal to true, or you could say equals false, however you want to look at it, but you want to take that into consideration. And then we're actually going to populate a last survey response date. So if you don't want to over-survey people, this is a field that you could have added onto your contact record. And that is actually called, look in here. Here we go. Last survey response date. You have to kind of know what this data is here, and I believe the formula is here, last 30 days. For you, it could be 60 days, whatever your scenario is. I believe that formula is last 30 days. It does have to be capitalized. Salesforce is very specific on this, and they will tell me if I am not correct. And when I try to say this, sometimes I forget what these are, and you have to kind of look them up. So this is our scenario. The case closed, it equals the product type of GC 1040. The contact has not opted out of receiving email, and they have not sent in a survey response within the last 30 days. Okay? And hit save and next. Okay? So that's just our workflow, but now we got to associate an action to that, and ours is to send out an email with that survey response in it. So below here you'll see add workflow actions, new email alert. Okay, they just want you to give it a description. Now we got to browse out to our email template that we just created. Let's see here. I believe that's the one. Training closed case feedback. Did I put a date on it? There we go. Closed case survey 6.6. Okay. Now the recipients can get a little tricky, but if you go under recipient type, you just want to select email field, and I find that that is typically the case for closed case, that it's email field. In email field, you want it to be the contact email. Okay. And you can go ahead and hit save. The from email address, you can have your admins set up different emails so that it has a different from address on it. For now, we're just going to use the default, but that is a different option that you could utilize. Hit save. And so we have our rule, and we have the actions that are required around that. And I'm just going to select done. You'll see the option here. You do need to activate it. A lot of times I'll run a whole scenario and be like, why isn't it working? Because I forgot to activate the workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and activate that. And see, now that does have an active action against it. Okay, so we've built our object to house the survey response in. We have built the email template to go out and the workflow to trigger that out. So the next and final step is to actually create the mapping. So if we go back into ClickTools here, we're still in the builder of our survey. If we go to survey settings, you can come into survey settings and do a number of different things. You could change the name if you wanted to. You could change the folder it lives in. You can select different languages it to be presented in. Just keep in mind that you do need to actually have those translated from English to Arabic or whatever your scenario is. The key thing that we're looking for in here right now is this Salesforce pull down. If you have Oracle or Sugar, you would see that, say that there instead of Salesforce. What we want to do is we just want to set that to be either manual or automatic. A lot of times during my testing, when I'm just getting the mapping started, I will choose manual, but we'll just do automatic for today. And this is where you actually need to enter in your Salesforce credentials. So this is your Salesforce login, not your ClickTools login that you need here. So that's how it passes the data into Salesforce, is when you submit the survey, it logs into Salesforce and passes that data in. Okay. If you're utilizing a sandbox, you just check that response there. You also have the option to delete responses after successful sync. Something to keep in mind with that, I would say if you are going to utilize that, maybe keep that unchecked the first week that you're actually collecting live data, just to make sure that you've actually gotten everything that you want, because once that data passes into Salesforce, it actually removes it from ClickTools and you won't have a record of it. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay. You can also come in here and change that look and feel template, select a different one if you wanted to. You do have the option to have a start date or close date to surveys. And then you do have the option for custom URLs if you have any created. If you're looking to how to build out those custom URLs, there's a really great topic in the help section about custom URLs. We're going to keep these defaults. If you select or change allow answers on URL, those hidden questions won't come across, thus their data is not going to work. And then especially during testing, you want multiple responses set to yes. Every time you launch the survey then, especially for a short one, it's going to look like a brand new survey. If that is selected to no, it'll retain your first answers that you answered on that survey. It actually retains that data for 30 days. It's really the most useful, and that's set to no if you sent out an extremely long survey that somebody would maybe not finish in a single sitting. Okay. You then have an exit page here, and this exit page is where they're going to go after they submit the survey. So a lot of times people just choose their website, or the other option is you can create a whole other survey and paste in the URL to here and have it go to just like a thank you page where you've written, thank you very much for taking your survey, just a little text, but it's actually its own survey URL. For our purposes, I'm just going to put in our ClickTools page. Okay. You can test it, make sure you got it right. Okay. So we've got our username, password in for Salesforce. We got our exit page. I'm going to hit save. Okay. And now we can start the mapping process. So if I go to surveys, you'll see here's my closed case survey 6.6. Now you'll see that it has this little circle here, meaning that it's ready for mapping. And then if it's not ready for mapping, you will see that NA option. And you actually will see a red check if it's failed, if you were trying to sync something or you have some errors. So that's just something to keep in mind. So to be able to start your mapping, you just got to make sure that that is set like that through that login credential we entered. Over on the right-hand side here, you'll then see the double arrow, and that's going to allow us to start the mapping process. So surveys, find your survey, find your double arrows, select map. Now it's asking me again for my Salesforce login credentials. Again, this is Salesforce login credentials. I'm going to go ahead and select login. It's retained mine from previous entries. And at this point, it's trying to just gather all your Salesforce object details. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time. Sometimes it's very fast. Okay, mapping. So typically what I do is I put all my referencing items just like I do in the survey at the very top. And let's just have our builder open so we can take a look here. So I have contact ID, account ID, case ID, case subject. My 3 referencing items are contact, account, and case. Okay, so that's going to be the first parts of my mapping, is going to be outlining those objects, and then we will map to the custom objects. So I'm going to start with contact. Now actually I'll start with account, that's fine. So add new object. Now there is multiple options to create new. We're not going to be creating a new account. We're just kind of updating and relating the response to the account. But you do have 4 options: create new, find existing, update existing, which is what we're going to utilize. You have the option to update existing or create new, which is if you can't find this account, create a new one. So we're just going to use update existing for our example, and this is what you would do. So we want to do account ID, so where account ID equals the account ID. So this side is Salesforce, where it says where. These are all the account fields in the Salesforce side, and equals is coming from your ClickTools side, so that's your ClickTools questions. Okay. We actually don't need to utilize any of this data down here that it automatically puts in. Account name is a required field, but since we're just updating existing, we're not going to pass an account name because it already knows the account name. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. Okay. So we're not actually passing anything to the account record. We're just creating that relationship, so you don't have to add anything else to that one. The next one we're going to do is contact. So I'm just looking for the contact object. Again, this is all on the Salesforce side, so all your objects are over there. Add new object. Again, I'm not creating a new account. I'm just updating the existing record and creating an association. And this one is really the contact ID is what I want. And that is question 1 in my survey, so Salesforce contact ID. I am actually updating a field on the contact record called last survey response date. As you see here, so that already exists on my contact record, and I'm going to pass a date into that field. So when that workflow looks at it, it determines have they responded to a survey in the last 30 days. And by default, ClickTools has built in some date fields and some other items down towards the bottom of that pull-down list. So again, the left-hand side here is all your ClickTools questions, and then some items that are in here just completely by default. So completion date. So I'm just going to pass a date. Actually, it looks like it needs to be a date time field to my last survey response date time field. Okay. And I'm just going to hit save. You can map, and you don't have to hit save, but I like to hit save just in case something freakish happens. I have my mapping saved. The final object lookup item I'm going to utilize is the case. So that's our final hidden question. Again, I'm not creating a new case, I'm just updating that existing record. And I'm using the case ID, and then equals, and for us that's question number 3. Okay. And we're not currently updating any other fields on the case, but you could obviously add in some other additional fields if you wanted to pass some certain criteria in. But as you can see, these are our 3 reference items then. So 1, 2, and 3, I always put my reference items on the top, and you will see why as we go to create this next object relationship. So I'm looking for our custom object that we created. Here it is. Closed case feedback is the name of my object. Now, if for some reason somebody doesn't like the name of that object or something to that nature, or the field label, and you've already done all the mapping, you can change the field label name, but do not change the API name, otherwise it will wipe out this mapping because it doesn't know what you're looking for any longer. So that's just something to keep in mind. You can change the field label, but do not change the API name if you have done your mapping already. Okay. For this one, we are actually going to be creating a new record. So this is a new record in that object, whereas the other ones, that account, that contact, and that case already existed, so we're just updating them. But this one is going to be the create new option. Okay. And I'm going to select add new field. I'm going to put my referencing items on the top here so that it knows, hey, I need to reference and associate this response with the account, contact, and case. So I put those on top as well. I'm just going to select 3 fields here. Okay. So if I look here, you won't see these reference items here. Again, this is on the custom object I created. These are lookup fields. If you didn't create those lookup fields, you're not going to see these options here. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you don't see those, make sure you did create those lookups. So I'm going to do account. And if I scroll down to the bottom here, you'll see I have a reference to account, contact, and case. Those references only get populated into that pull down because they live above the mapping. Okay? And I know the next one is contact. And I know I have contact over here. And I have case. And I have case. Okay. Again, these are our lookups we created in the object. And these come available because we've created these options, referencing points on the very top of the mapping. Okay. Next part is the fun part. So then really it's just a one-to-one relationship with actual questions. So we don't necessarily need to pass case subject back in. The case knows what the subject is. We just pass that in simply to populate the survey with some data. So that's just something to keep in mind. You don't have to pass every single question in if you don't want to. Case subject is one of those that we're not going to pass back in because we already know what that subject is because Salesforce has it recorded. Okay, so a multi-radio, it may kind of look like one question, but it's actually really 4 questions. So you have to create 4. We've created 4 fields in the object for it, and we have to do 4 connections. So the first one is speed of response. So we've created a field in our custom object called speed of response. So we link that one in. I'm just going to add a number of these fields in here. Okay. So question 5.2 is issue resolution. So issue resolution. And you'll find if you got long questions that you have to kind of keep in mind what goes with what. So you may have to keep a little mental mapping in your brain or make a document of them if they're not as straightforward as issue resolution, issue resolution. Some can get very complex. Team professionalism. Team professionalism. Okay. One more. Overall performance. Overall performance. What do we have left? So what we have left is how likely would you recommend and our essay question. Okay. How likely would you recommend? How likely to recommend? And then the essay. And how can we improve? Okay. Let's select save on that. And then I think I also told you we were going to pass in a survey URL just so you could take a look to see how that looks. So if I go over here on my object side, I should have a field created for it, survey response link. And then again, this is another field that gets put into the ClickTool side by default. We'll just put a read-only link in. You have the option for an editable link or a printable link. And so you can pass this in to anywhere that you needed it to be. So people could actually just look at an individual survey response if you wanted to do it that way. Okay. I'm going to hit save again. Okay. And so that's our mapping. So our reference items on top and then our actual custom object on the bottom. Right? So if I go, we're kind of running out of time here. If I go to cases, and I'm just going to go to this case that I have created here. My product type is that GC1040. I'm going to go ahead and just select close case and hope that I have everything set up properly. And save. I gotta open my Gmail for you. 1 minute. Okay. I think it's this one. Okay. Let's just double check that URL. Hopefully this is the correct link. So they'll receive the email, they'll have the link embedded in it. Yours probably will be prettier because you'll actually embed it underneath there. Let me just double check one more. I think that was the one we created. I'm going to launch it. Again, you wouldn't see this. You would hide these from the end user, but these are really just so that we can see that the data is actually getting populated in here correctly. So I would recommend when you are testing to keep them unhidden. When you are satisfied with the fact that the data is getting in there, you can go ahead and hide them. You'll see our case subject here was called training test. It actually passed it into that area, so case details, training test. You can pass in the case number, case ID, whatever is, works for you. Then we're just going to go ahead and answer this. I'm going to give this a 4 just so we can see this. Test. Submit. Goes out to our ClickTools page upon the submission. If we go back into ClickTools, let's just see here. I think this might be the one. Just give it a refresh. So if I look at the case, you'll see that it is a related list to the closed case feedback, so it's called one closed case feedback. So that's how it's going to look. It's going to be a related list, and it's going to have a link in it. You can actually name this. I forgot to do that part, but you can name it so that there is item, so it says something else, closed case feedback. So if we also go to the contact here, you'll see it's a related list as well. So I have a couple more in this one. And if you go to the account, you see it's listed here as well as another related list. I think this is it. And here is the data that I put in. And that's kind of how the response will look. Again, these are created all from your lookup. This account, contact, and case. These are all in here with a lookup, and that's how you can generate and click right out to them if you wanted to. Here's all our questions that we answered. Here's our essay questions, and then here's our survey link that we put in. So if I clicked on that, it would show me the actual survey response. Can't edit it. It's only a read only. And that pretty much concludes creating an automated closed case scenario. It's probably a lot of data to take in on one shot, but hopefully you all found it useful.